Namaste and welcome to Satsang this evening. So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit more about, I've had many requests actually since we did the Satsang on Monday to talk about some things that came up in that in that Satsang. Really about to go deeper into what it really means to be fully awake, which is uh, to be living consciously as the one being, where there is only one, and what that really means, which may not be that obvious to start off with. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit more and encompass something really beautiful happened in Monday's satsang. So for most of us, there certainly was for myself two distinct stages of awakening in my own journey. Having said that, these two distinct stages were often going on at the same time. They don't happen in a linear fashion. And really describing them as a stage is just to really point attention to a certain place, but they're not really separate to each other. And the first one that most of us are quite well aware of is a kind of waking up out of our idea of ourself. And this is often where most of us get our first glimpse of what we actually are. And so this is categorized by, you might find yourself recognizing, I'm not this body, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my my world, my perceptual world. And it's very much a waking up out of what we knew ourselves to be. And it really is probably the first thing that's going to happen is it may or may not come with, it really doesn't matter either way, an energy shift, sometimes called Kundalini awakening. It really doesn't need a name, but some energy going upwards, up the chakra system, cleansing through the chakra system. And then there is a second and very distinct stage, which is often misunderstood, that I really want to focus on tonight, and hopefully bring into some more clarity. Because many people say, oh, you know, I've been into non-duality for quite a while, and you know, I recognize that I'm formless, and but inside that person, you can feel that there is still some denial of the old sense of self. So we wake up out of our sense of self, our egoic sense of self. I'm not this person, I'm not this form. I am formless and intangible. And that's a necessary stage to have, to recognize I am not what I think I am. But there is a maturing that is going to happen for awakening to continue. And it may pause at this point when there's a waking up out of the idea of ourselves. It may pause for quite some time. It did for me. There was a massive relief here. I'm not my screwed up mind. I'm not my screwed up relationships. I'm not anything that I can perceive, you know, and the netty, not this, not that, will take you to this particular place. And then onwards, if you let it. And it really is then a entering of the form, a falling back in love with everything else that we have discarded. So I want to really look at that. Why would we want to do that? Why why is that part of non-duality? If I've spent all this time, working to understand that I am not this body, I'm not these thoughts or these emotions and experiences, why on earth would I want to go back into all that? And it's really because if you look at what non-duality means, it really means not two, it means one. So the most fullest experience of being one is where there is only one version of yourself. There is not two. And for most people, when this first stage is completed, there is very definitely two versions of ourselves, if you will. There is our old egoic sense of self, and then there is, who I thought I was in my life, and which includes the seeker, the seeking, the student. And then there is the realization that I am, what I really am is formless and not a thing at all. But for the fullest experience of the one, we have to come to realize that our old sense of self, who I thought I was, our egoic sense of self, is also the formlessness. It really is made of the same stuff as the formlessness. So if there is anything within us at all that is denying our humanity, denying our separate sense of self, then we're never going to be able to experience this coming back down into the fullness of who we are. And it's often that people get stuck at this: how do I actually do that? How do I go back in? And why would I want to? And for me, I can only describe it really when it was happening, that to wake up out and to have this realization felt like wisdom, sort of wisdom coming, clarity, understanding, and a great deal of peace for a little while. But then I began to feel that I was suffering again because I felt something was missing. It hadn't fully gone all the way. And then this coming back into the form and understanding that I am also this human being too. It's not different to the formlessness that I am, that it's made out of. This body is the formlessness, and so are my thoughts, and so are my relationships, and so are my emotions, and that they are also me. They are not fundamentally what I am. They are going to disappear. They're shapes I'm holding for a while. But they must also be accepted, that the formlessness, the ultimate reality, is appearing as this human being also, and all that involves. And that really felt to me like an act of love. It was the deepest act of love. Love wasn't satisfied in coming out of that was the first stage. I'm not any of this. I'm not anything I can perceive. But then the realization deepened that anything I can perceive must be arising out of me, the perceiver, and therefore ultimately cannot be other than me. So paradoxical as it seems, contradictory as it seems, there is this going back in to your life and making friends again with everything that we have been rejecting about ourselves, that the self, the noumenon, the reality, awareness, whatever you want to call it, is appearing as you right now, with all your work in progressness. The totality of the perfection of that formlessness can appear as your life, your humanity, and that all of that must be re-embraced, that this is also what I am. If we're denying any part of ourself at all, the form or the formlessness will feel incomplete. And even if we say I'm formless and we're rejecting the form, we're still coming from this dualistic place of two. There are two versions of me. There is what I've seen myself to be now that's real, and what I thought I was before. What I thought I was before is appearing inside the greater version of myself. It's just an arising that's happening inside me and is part of me. The ego really isn't different to the self. It is the self. It's a collection of thoughts, ego. You could say that the self has when it's confused about itself. It's not a real living thing. It's a bunch of energies that are either in resistance to what is or trying to grab a hold of what is. And the fullest experience of yourself will come when this second stage begins to really mature, where there is a longing for completion, that there is a longing to experience without any division, that it's not enough to know the form and formlessness, that if I still have any idea that those are different, I'll feel inherently divided and I'll still be suffering. Not as much as before, but your capacity to tolerate any suffering will probably shifted, so it will feel that you are really suffering. And love is kind of embracing. Wisdom is kind of defining and discerning and coming out of and understanding, and love is embracing. You could say the first stage is exclusive. It is, I'm not this, I'm not that, and this is what I am. And this second stage is, for me, it's a very literal. There was a sense of this reality, this energy just pushing its way back down the chakra system and re-embracing everything and healing everything, cleansing everything one by one. And as it was doing that, it was kind of, when I say it, I mean me, reality. And you may notice this going on in your life. It was working through whatever area of my life was to do with that particular energy center. And it wasn't content with a halfway realization. And pretty much everyone I come across when I'm working with people now are in that same phase, or it's beginning, or it's stuck at a certain point in that coming back in and loving what is. Most importantly, to love your humanity, to understand that what I see with my senses, what I think about myself and other beings, what I feel in my emotions is also me. And if I'm rejecting any part of that at all, it's like trying to pull myself in half and then wondering why I hurt, wondering why I don't feel complete. I'm saying this part of me should not be, this emotion, these thoughts. And this is how you are showing up in this moment. You are the formless reality of all that is. And you are showing up as you, as your human existence also. Not a human being, but absolutely appearing to be a human being, and all that entails, involves. So I'd ask you to look at where you are being asked to include again, that the final awakening is inclusive. It wants to take everything back in, every emotion, every thought, every perception, every judgment, every relationship that needs some healing in your life, everything. It will want to look at that. It will all be done for you with your cooperation, your permission. But it's the fullest meaning of non-duality, where there is no longer two, and there never was two. That form and formless, what I see with my senses, what I experience when I use my mind and my senses, is exactly the same as I am experiencing when I close my eyes and self-inquire and find that vast empty void. Where has it gone when I open my eyes? Has it disappeared, or is it not right? All of this right here, sitting right where you are right now. And this second stage is massively misunderstood. It was absolutely no idea what was happening when it started to happen, and why I felt this urge to go further, and even what that was, I didn't know. I was lucky enough at the time to hear a teaching by Adyashanti about redemptive love, and it just really absolutely it just clarified some process that was going on. But this love is going to want to come back and heal your life right now. The end result is you know exactly what you are, reality, and you are completely at home in your life. Just a normal, ordinary human being within a kind of extraordinary knowing inside of what you actually are, but completely at home being a father or a mother or a sister or doing whatever job you're doing, whatever work you're doing, completely as much at ease sat at a family gathering as we are in Satsang, not seeing any difference between the two, because all of our life becomes sacred then. All of our work, our job, our relationships, our family, everything becomes part of our worship of the one, that you cannot do anything in this world without it being a kind of prayer and a worship of what you actually are, which is all of this. So bear in mind that these two processes will probably be going on at the same time, just to make things extra confusing. They won't be, it's very rare that it happens, you know, in a linear sequence. And sometimes it even happens backwards. There is a falling in love with all of this, and then an understanding afterwards of what all this is. It doesn't have to go the way that I've described. But if you are rejecting any part of yourself at all, first we start off on this pathway, we're sure that we are the form. I am this human being, that's what I am. And we are unconsciously rejecting the formless reality. And then most of us find out that we are the formless reality and set about rejecting our form and our life and everything that makes us an individual but not separate expression of the one. And eventually we'll be called to re-embrace everything that we had to discard in that initial stage. And we haven't discarded it in our actual existence, we just discarded it in our self-definition. I am not my relationships, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my my humanity as such. I'm not a human being. Eventually, though, we have to re-embrace the fact that you are the one self appearing as you. And there's something wonderful about that. You will never, ever again appear as you. The self can never, ever appear as the same manifestation twice because it's infinite in its expression. What does that mean? It means that you are here on purpose. That the fullest expression of that love is how it wants to move as you, as your life, in a way that contributes to the whole well-being of society, and that can only be explored when you've allowed this fullness, to this love, to kind of come back in and fall back in love with your own humanity, quirks and all, you know, no matter where you're at, no matter what things you may want to change about your character, all of that can still continue. You can always be working on more compassion, more love, more understanding. But from this place of recognizing what it actually is that's appearing as you, what you really are, that you are the totality, the perfection, appearing as an imperfect human being, and that you are so perfect that you can appear, you can play with the sense of imperfection, meaning not wrongness, but becoming. So in the end, to consciously be the one is to re-embrace everything about you that makes you you, to not be cutting yourself off from some part of yourself. It's necessary at first to discriminate between form and formless, to see that formless does exist and it's real and it's fundamentally what we are. But then that formlessness, that understanding of what that is, must come to re-embrace the form. Forms and formless are just two ways of looking at the same thing. When you open your eyes and use your senses, you see forms. When you close your eyes and look with the awareness itself, you see awareness. But they are the same. They're not different. They're not opposites, although they'll seem to be. What effect does this have on your life? I don't know if I can really put that into words, but you will be just no longer in conflict with anything at all. Whatever arises inside your heart, your body, your mind, your emotions, your experience will be embraced from this oneness. It's what non-duality means. You know, that's what Advaita means. It's not two versions of myself. It doesn't necessarily mean me and other. There's no me and other, although that's part of it. But I'm not divided inside myself anymore. I'm not saying this bit is not me and this bit is me and this bit should go away and this bit I want to stay, because they are both the same. The world that we see with our senses is exactly the same as the world that we perceive in our self-inquiry, in our deepest meditation. What does that mean? It means your life right now is the self living, appearing as you, a unique expression, a unique and wonderful expression of the one. So most of us get caught up in this re-embracing, and it's natural that when you've done this work to come out of identification with the body, that you won't necessarily feel all that excited about re-embracing emotions and thoughts and everything that makes you you. But once you've seen clearly enough that what you are is formless, there will be no ability to get lost again. You can go back into your human life and live it till its fullest and experience a fullness, a richness that is only possible that when you're not negating any part of your experience at all, when you're not at conflict or dividing yourself at all. There is nothing more amazing in human existence than actually consciously being yourself without any idea of what that is and without any exclusion of anything. It really is authentically you right now as you are, your humanity, whatever emotions you may be feeling, with no ability to say I should be other than I am, or I shouldn't be how I am right now. What would your life look like if that was your experience right now? How would you feel if, no matter what arose in your mind and body, for the rest of your human existence and beyond, you had no ability left to reject or deny, or to say should or shouldn't about yourself or anyone? Wouldn't that be a different way to live? Wouldn't that be the fullest expression, where form and formless are seen to be the same, where self, the viewpoint of the self, and the ego are seen to be the same one? Ego is when the self doesn't understand itself. The greater view that we come to understand is really the self when it does consciously recognize itself, but they are the same. One, the viewpoint, the self is looking through thoughts and is slightly confused. It has these glasses on that are saying, I am a separate being. And then it takes them off, but it is the same being looking through your mind and body all the time. So what could you bring back into your experience? What could you welcome more? What could you accept is also you? What could you make some space for inside your own heart, inside your own being? What have you been denying? Necessarily to realize what you are, but then to live as that which doesn't negate anything, that which doesn't exclude anything at all. There is a wonderful process that occurs where it just begins to ask you, love will begin to ask you to re-embrace all that you are, from a place where you can no longer be confused. I am also that thought pattern. I am also that emotion. I am also that dysfunctional relationship. I am also that seeming lack, or whatever it is that we're struggling with. And there is nothing then that you can experience that you can suffer from in that. And experience then becomes a kind of remembering of the totality of what you are, that everything you can experience is also you for the rest of your existence. And in the end, you end up just as much in love with your humanity and all that that means, right where it is right now, as we are with our formless nature, because they deeply, deeply have been recognized to be the same one. If there's a deep and profound recognition that form, the world of form that we see through the ego, and the world of formlessness that we see as the self are the same thing, then this compulsive habit we have to try to divide ourselves and reject part of ourselves has to stop. There has to be a coming to rest, an inability to reject anything. Just the one, whether it's appearing divided or undivided, it is the same one. So hopefully you can recognize some part of your own journey wherever you are at in that there is probably still some waking up out of the old sense of self. I was never that, never those definitions, never my thoughts. They can't limit me. But I am also appearing as my thoughts. I am appearing as this life, this body, this unique individual. What can you say yes to that you've been saying no to inside? What can you welcome a little bit more than you have done? Which part of yourself have you been rejecting, negating? And what does it feel like when we're no longer doing that? What does it feel like when even a strong negative emotion happens and you cannot go into conflict with it, into division? You cannot be an I experiencing it. It's just what is in that moment. What does that feel like? I will open it up if anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to share or ask. If you click on participants and we see we have a hand already, click on raise hand and let me know that you want to ask a question. So thank you. We'll go to Ronald.
Hey, Ellen.
Hi, how you doing?
Great, thanks. So I guess we have all these paradoxes, which obviously the term paradox means you can't intellectually understand it. It's just something actually maybe to celebrate. But at times they can feel kind of counterintuitive. So I've got one or two different questions. One is, if in fact we're the individualization of an undivided self, I've been struggling in the last couple months with the word worship. because in a sense I'm worshiping myself.
Yes.
And I mean, I can remember reading Nisargadatta Maharaj, worship yourself, have reverence for yourself. And it just seems, I don't know. I don't know why there's this kind of aversion that I grew up as a traditional Christian, and there was, we're taught to revere God and the word holy,
Hmm.
and kind of what that meant. And just curious about your thoughts about that, because that's, I don't know, that's a space, a re-embracing, shall we say, that I've been challenged with.
Yeah, it was the same for me. I was the last thing I wanted to do was worship anything when I did this sort of up and out, waking up out of, and if you'd have spoke to me then, I probably would have been saying all the classic, there is nobody to worship, there's nothing, there's only all of that. And for a time there was an aversion to it, but then there was a softening and a recognition that actually my whole life is a act of worship, to an act of love, to have this body and to be able to um, transmute this karma and transcend this karma was actually an act of worship in itself, an act of love. And that even if I'm unconscious that that is what's going on, it is really has always been the one self appearing as God and human being, and who the one that's praying and worshipping, and who we're praying to or worshipping. And there was this suddenly, after the aversion, I guess, an intense need to find out what worship really means. Is it something I'm doing on my knees with my hands folded? It is that too, but is there a kind of deeper um, meaning to that word? And it became actually a wonderful exploration in itself, that what if just living my life as a human being and accepting, welcoming all this stuff back in, like I was saying, was actually a form of worship. An actual, how far can love go in this lifetime? How much can it embrace? How much can I ever reach the end of that capacity, growing capacity to love? And there was, I realized the aversion to worship was really from this sort of dualistic idea that I was praying to something outside of myself. I never really, I was always a bit of a control freak, and I never really liked the idea that there was someone in control of my life, and you either got the good stuff or you didn't. So, yeah, it's, I hope that gives you some direction to go with it.
Yes, thank you. The second quick follow-up question I have, slightly different, is, so this, again, paradox of being fully human, fully divine,
Hmm.
and the actual embracing of that and the feeling of the energy. I understand it intellectually, and I think there have been times when I'm in embracing it, but I'm not sure I can use the word energetically yet, as relates to any kind of Kundalini, experience. But once you kind of embrace that, I've used this phrase before from the New Testament. It says everything is allowable, but not everything is beneficial.
Hmm.
So now I'm re-based on the perfect, always am the embodiment of self. Does that mean I'm always going to make good decisions that don't have maybe not suffering consequences, but painful consequences?
Um, no, but if you make a mistake in your humanness, there'll be no ability to berate yourself about it at all. I
It's
can't
just a judgment
remember.
factor. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, and I really wish I could. Somebody said, you either make the right decision, or you get what you want, or you get a learning experience. Which I thought is a wonderful way to put it. But um, that's part of embracing the humanity. If I was to do something, make a mistake, do the wrong thing, before, it would have led to endless, why have you done that? Why, and using that as evidence against myself. But now it's just kind of like, well, that's funny. Why did I do that? And it's just, accept it as what is. There must be a reason why it happened, you know, even if I don't know what that is. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Good questions. Lovely. We'll go to Lopo.
Hi, Helen.
Hiya. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. Good.
The past couple of days have seemed difficult, but I don't know why. So I've been sort of trying to, I guess, not in my head, but just trying to figure out. And I've been there seems to have been a real feeling of boredom, and that the day is just dragging. And there's been, and I'm just not sure where that, I don't really know what that emotion is, because it's not, boredom is not an emotion. So then I feel like I can't then ask, self-inquire about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
It's a sneaky one, right? I remember, you know, you think that fear or, you know, shame or something will be your biggest obstacle, but actually, you know, sometimes it's like I'm just bored now, I want to go do something else, you know, or the restlessness that came up for me, a real kind of, I just don't want to be doing this anymore, you know, have to move, have to do something now, you know. And there was just this kind of, the more I work through the emotions, you know, the backlog of the emotions that we've talked about previous satsangs, that there was underneath that just this kind of general energy of ego, which is kind of just saying no. You know, it's just like, no, I don't want to, you can't make me, you know, something like that inside. And when I started to kind of get to that point where it wasn't even an emotion anymore, it was just kind of not even thoughts then, it was just kind of disagreement with what is, discontentment, this is the best words I could put to it. And I didn't actually sit with it, because I found myself doing all kinds of things like just to burn this energy off, but I sat inside with it, you know, I sat with it and just sort of looked at it, what really is it. And it was just this, I don't know, like seeking energy that was just trying to always get somewhere, to get away from now and try to get somewhere else. And it was literally I couldn't sit down sometimes. It was very strong, and it did not like being exposed at all. It was like, you know, every 2 minutes I found myself attention wandering from it, you know, trying to do something to feel better. And I recognized all the times I'd done that without realizing. You know, you touch upon this energy, and then you find yourself, next thing you know, you're watching Netflix or something. And when did that happen? You know, I was sat there with my inquiry. Next thing I'm watching a movie, and can you get a sense of it?
Yeah, definitely, because it's like restlessness, but I'm too not bothered to do anything anyway. So sometimes I'll just end up going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is fatigue there in the form, and I think that's from being in early recovery. But that might not be as well. So I'm open to that. But there's the restlessness there, I guess, and this day is just too long.
It does come from our old sense of self. You know, if you whichever way you recognize the self, if it's through deep silence or whichever method you use, just look at that. Is that silence restless? Is it trying to get somewhere? Just keep discerning as much as you can. You just kind of hit upon this raw energy that's underneath the emotional charge and all the noise of thoughts. When you start to kind of notice it, it's just this disagreement with what is, isn't it? It's just discontent. I don't know a real better word to, just to notice that is also a phenomena that's perceivable. You can perceive that, you know. And is the silence, is the awareness restless? Is it, you know, is the stillness trying to get to the next moment already? You know, is it and just start to notice as you just watch it, it will begin to discharge itself. You know, when we don't indulge, what we've normally done is we feel that and we go do something. feel better. You know, we try to change something.
Yeah,
As you don't do that, it'll start to. I'm not saying don't make any activity, but notice that impulse to try and feel better when that comes up. You know, you can kind of go, I'm not going to indulge that right now.
Yeah, there's been more like more today. I have just like sat with it, and just allows it to be, even though it's uncomfortable, but more so today. There's been moments where I've like, I'll go and do something, and then just sort of go, okay, it's still there, and that it's
it was really
sat with it.
It was quite amazing when I recognized it, because I realized this is the energy that would, you know, I couldn't even sit down and have a cup of tea without feeling I should be doing something else. And this restlessness had run my entire existence. And I was like, wow, you know, I'm feeling guilty about sitting down for 5 minutes and not doing anything. And, you know, begin to touch upon it more and more as you sort of get deeper into what ego actually is, which is just general disagreement with reality. You know, so just observe it, just watch it, and it'll begin to what sustained it is this, it sort of rises up when we go try to do something, or we try to change our state somehow, you know, to feel better. That you can sort of sit with it as much as you can throughout the day, not literally sitting with it, you know, but just being with it, I mean, and it'll begin to discharge, and you'll see it's just kind of the core of the ego, like the sort of second to last layer, if there is one.
Just quickly, it's definitely been like I don't want to read stuff, you know, I don't
bored now, bored of this self-inquiry stuff.
I don't want to watch, you know, like somebody else or like yourself on YouTube, but actually I did a sort of 10-minute thing on, you know, sort of thing, and but not to make myself feel better, it was just thank you, Helen, that's really helpful.
Wonderful, thanks. Vidya?
Yeah, hi Helen.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Just what you were saying, and following on from conversation earlier today, you're talking about the old self, and as you were talking then, it was just wonderful, and I got so excited in my being, because I just saw that the old self and the new seeings and what's happening now is there's absolutely no difference whatsoever. What never changed was this moment. The only appearance of that difference is so that the old sense of self just went around, you know, all over the place, like, you know, ants sort of wander around, go around in circles. It's probably a good description of what my life was like. And to just seeing a bit of an evenness now, but it's just seeing there's absolutely no difference, and I hadn't ever seen that before until you talk about this all-inclusive, and just to look at that the only thing that never changed was this moment, no matter what's showing up in that expression. So thank you for that. I thank you for all the satsangs. They're just so wonderful to listen to, and just keep. Yeah,
I'm glad you're seeing it deeper. It's it'll never it'll always be revealing itself clearer, you know, which is quite amazing in itself that it can do that, you know, the self. Each epiphany clearer than the last, you know, and it leaves you with that deeper peace. There's just less ability to reject anything each time, isn't there? Something gets washed away in a seeing or something like that.
So that, you know, that what I am has never ever changed in all of it. You know, that's just amazing to Yeah, wow.
I am as I always was, you know.
Yeah,
In the
yeah,
midst of all this amazing imagined journey, here I am still.
yeah, in this beautiful dream. Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Lovely. Steve?
Hello.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Hi, love, not too bad. Since last time we spoke, before we walk, I got a bit in front of it. You know, there's I was accepting the fears, looking, seeing what it was, and then saying, well, is it real, sort of thing? Is fear? Can it affect me? Type of.
Yeah.
Same thing with what fear. That one. It was. Can I really be unsafe?
Yeah.
Oh, and I was doing. I say I kept in front of it, although only just. But then a couple of days, a few days, someone was saying it sort of upset me a bit. I sort of curled up. But I spoke to somebody afterwards and they put it right. Oh, okay, that's okay. So I let that go. And I don't know. It starts to creep. I tell you, the other day I was listening to Zagadatta. I like Zagadatta. I love his. It's because my favourite is I Am, isn't it? You know, and he does it perfect. Not knocking you at all. But it's his, isn't it? You know, and it is brilliant how it takes you. I was listening to that and I was getting a right nice, peaceful thing going on. And during days I was driving, whatever, I was sat in car and I got this just I don't know, half a second, you know, like Papa G talks about it was just a beautiful, beautiful sense of really, it would come and gone. I had glimpsed it, you know what I mean? But what a wonderful thing. I've never seen it as good as that before, but it was hardly nothing, but it's I thought, is that it? Is that what they're talking about? You know, it can't be that good.
It starts to break through, you know, as the result of your consistent questioning. You kind of, if you sort of think about it, the absence of any ability to feel fear has to kind of lead to joy and, you know, that kind of state breaking through. Is kind of what's left when your ability to agree that you're not safe is disappearing.
But some got covered up. Some covered up.
just a little glimpse though, to say keep going, this is what's
that
waiting.
Is that what we're talking about? That?
Yes, just starts to, like the sun starts to break through the clouds, you know, these beliefs, I'm not safe or I'm not good enough.
It's so I can't put the words to it. It was just so bang on. Bloody hell. And anyway, then I don't know. A couple of days later, it's not the fear so much as resentment creeps in.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm sorry, there was a certain thing happened to me and it upset me. I thought, well, I've had this conversation. I've looked at it before. I've talked about it. I've dealt with that. Just forget about it. You know what I mean? And I kept doing it, and then it kept creeping back in another way. Then the conversation started. Then the resentment. I'm ready for top of myself. I thought, what's happened here? You know.
What is it? Is as you've sort of working your way through the fear, then the next most urgent emotion will arise, asking to be included in your inquiry, then included back into you in this inclusive process. So what would the you know, the feeling of resentment, if you can sort of look at that, what's the, you know, the story behind the fear is I'm not safe. You know, what's the story behind resentment, and can you sit with that question now?
Been badly done to, that sort of thing. That's what I feel.
For me, there was a real strong conviction inside that life isn't fair. It's just not fair. I can't get what I want.
Definitely not fair. No, it's not. No.
And of course, our experiences agree with that then, and it becomes this self-fulfilling loop. So there was...
It's looking for something to blame then, someone to blame. I blame, it's them, their head starts thinking dark thoughts about them. And I'm saying, well, it's all nonsense, this, Steve. You know it's nonsense. But it still takes off.
Is it really true, you know, that life isn't fair? Is it really true it's against me, or life is against me, or whatever the story is? You know, stay with that question and ride that question then until the actual thing has stopped happening. You know, with each kind of layer, there's this kind of emotional body of emotions that have been generated by these stories that we didn't know were there. And you'll be, you know, you'll see one question is really working, the fear is dissipating, and then you'll be aware of the next most urgent emotion underneath that. For me, there was fear, anger, a lot of anger, guilt, shame, you know, a whole heap of. But I just kept working on the next one that came up. I just changed my question and stayed with the question. You know, what's the story behind this emotion? Okay, and just to keep asking it, like you said, something will break through more and more and more in your openness. And it's actually a good sign that the emotional frequency has changed to resentment. It shows me that you're getting to the bottom of the fear. You've peeled back kind of the layer of the onion of the egoic protection, you know, that we have.
Okay. So what happened last night was I go out on a night and I sit in car, or sit on rain, I sit in car. If it's not, I sit on bench and I meditate for half an hour. But each time I meditate, this stuff was coming back in, you know what I mean? And eventually I just said, oh, I give up. I just sort of give up. I've had enough now. And I remember Adi Shanti saying something like that. It's like, because we're asking him what all the meditations about, all the practice, what they're all about. And he said, it's to get you to the point where you just give up. It's not working. I thought, is that what's happening here then now? I just give up with it.
Well, if there is a giving up, it's a giving up of trying to solve these things in the outer world only, and a beginning of questioning the validity of the belief rather than, you know, just working in an outer way to resolve it. You know, it's a giving up of our old egoic way, which is not wrong. It's just largely ineffective at solving these things permanently. You know, so there was a stage for me where I stopped doing much meditation at all, and I became sort of constantly engaged in some contemplation, some inquiry. That actually became my meditation, because I could take it with me. Yeah.
Sorry, but that's what I've been doing, and that's what I thought. I'm just giving up with it, because it's so much effort. And if it's effort, it must be ego that's doing it. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. Just put it down, stay for a bit. Just let it take its own course for a while. That's all I'm saying. Give myself a bit of a break, and
okay,
that's what I feel like doing anyway.
Okay.
It'll pick up its own momentum, won't it, at some point?
As long as that's not unconscious avoidance and only you know.
I hope not. I really hope
well,
not.
then it's fine.
You know me, I try my best to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be in touch. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Lovely. Go to Sharon.
You know, I think I'm last. Should I just put down? You know, I think I was the last one to put the. All right, I'll just.
We'll go with you. It's okay. We'll carry on.
Okay. All right. You know, this has been beautiful today. I'm sitting here crying because, you know, what I struggled with in the last decade was that I'm not this body. So therefore, I don't have to do certain things for it. You know, it was a good way for the ego or the mind to hide. Because what I've seen and what I've experienced today with you and everyone else has been so wonderful to me is, you know, how misunderstood I was about everything. I mean, it was always me, the little girl. Now, I wondered, like in A Course in Miracles, what I've learned is that everyone out there is me. So my mother was me, but when she was so negative, was that me wanting her to mistreat me?
It's usually a reflection of our own kind of self-negation that's going on inside, whatever kind of beliefs we're carrying. If I come into this life with a belief that I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve to exist, or some belief like that,
and
then
it's obvious
got to kind of mirror back to us in our you know, our relationships, and everything we've inherited from our parents, they're also struggling with themselves. So we kind of bounce back off each other, these beliefs and projections in this endless cycle.
Yeah, and one of the things that I have learned over the years is the sperm and the egg really have the program. And my mother was pregnant and got polio when she had me. So we've talked about that. She was paralyzed. I can't imagine what her thinking was like and how that was downloaded into the system. And then her own guilt. She would tell me I reminded her of herself, and then she would scream at me, you know, abusively. So I just had a great misunderstanding today. Like I had like I guess an aha moment where it's like, because I have a dear friend that goes back years when I first started this process that used to say, be kind to Sharon. And I kept ignoring that because I just wanted the truth. And maybe I just misinterpreted, because Sharon doesn't really exist. I'm, you know, in some books, I'm the Holy Spirit. It was a very good way for me to ignore.
Well, and we need some amount of that. If we've been intensely suffering, identified as this human being only, then it is a huge relief to go, well, you know what, I'm not that. I'm not this person, this separate being I thought I was. And that's nice for a while. But then, you know, anything like I was, you begin to suffer again eventually, because you are excluding. You're not a separate being, but that, you know, the humanity is the self appearing as you, as the human being.
Right.
So it has to be
sense.
taken, yeah. So it's not like going backwards. It's a recognition of what that human being, that egoic sense of self actually is. And if we want truth, we have to eventually admit this is also the self right here, showing up as me with all my dysfunctional noise and stuff and everything that needs fixing. That is the perfect self appearing this way, even though we were so convinced it wasn't. You know, there's a real healing in that when that begins to happen.
And to accept like what they would call deficiencies in the human, like if it's whatever that may be. For me, it could be ADD or, you know, PTSD. Like I don't know. Like if I can, like on Monday, I had that response immediately in my mind, you know. And so it's okay that with you that day, I accepted it, and I fell into a really good day because there was an acceptance of what I felt. And I guess that what we're all looking for is this the self will unconditionally love us. That's really what it's not coming from ego, right? The ego
it has always been unconditionally loving. While, you know, on one hand, it's this ever perfect, unchanging, already so-ness. And then the other hand, it's appearing as this constantly evolving, unfolding human being. And those are both the same, and they both have to be embraced. And we can embrace this unfolding, this becomingness that happens in our humanity, ever deepening recognition of what we are. But from the understanding of that perfection that it already is. That perfection is so amazing that it can show up as imperfection, as a work in progress, you know, and that recognition, it allows you to be completely okay with where you are in your life right now, where your relations, you know, yes, you'd like them to continue to get better, but it's not being used as a way to berate yourself anymore. It's just where I'm at the moment, you know, and there's a deep peace in that.
Yeah, I mean, just to go quickly though, when I was in elementary school, but when I got to a certain point in my life, I loved everybody. And my mom used to say to me, well, I don't know how you can see the good in everybody. You take a sour lemon and you try to squeeze it. And yet it seems like such a contradiction, because I'd always say, isn't that person so nice? And well, my dad was like that. But here's the thing. I saw them out there nice, but I berated me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little confusing, which I have a meeting with you Tuesday, and we can talk about it. But, you know, like Nisargadatta Maharaj still smoked. And people would say, why do you still smoke? And he would say, well, I'm not that. But he is, actually. So why did he still smoke? Because he liked it, I guess.
you've got to remember that teachers are always kind of teaching on various levels, and what a teacher says to one being will be totally appropriate for that being. You know, like I might say, you're not the body, you're not the egoic sense of self, move away from it, you know, and then the very next moment I'm saying re-embrace it to someone else. But it's teaching is often paradoxical, contradictory, even in the same sentence. I contradict myself, but there is that place inside where it's understood. I have to step away from the idea that this is all I am, this human being, and then I can eventually come back to understand this is also what I am, but from a place of no longer being able to believe that this is all I am, which is the ego is that capacity to identify, to think this is all I am, this mind and body. When it's gone, I'm gone. So there can be a re-embracing of the humanity, but as a recognition that this is just another way I'm showing up in this moment. You know,
And
not
what a
from the old
miracle.
constricted place of, you know, this is all I am. You know.
Yes, and what I'd like to go away with today is it's a miracle that we're in this body, because we're really
Absolutely, it's a privilege to have a human existence of all the forms that could have happened, that have happened, and to be in satsang and awakening and recognizing is extraordinarily rare and a huge privilege. It really should not be taken lightly, not in a kind of responsible way, but just to realize how lucky we are. You know.
Thank
And
you. I'll see you Tuesday. Thank you so much. And
thank you
thanks
for sharing
everybody.
that. Lovely. Okay, Doreen. Sorry you've had to wait a while for all these questions, but they're good questions.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for this teaching today. It is making me think back to two other teachings, and especially about the form and the formlessness, and how they're one, or one and the same. So, and these two teachings, I'm wondering, I said, are we talking about the same thing? So I want to just share this. So I am an energy healer, energy worker, and one of my modalities is Jinshin Jitsu. And when you look at the philosophy behind Jinshin Jitsu, they speak as if they say that the source energy denses down to form the body, you know, in a process, you know, we form the organs, whatever. And so and then we also hear that everything is energy, right? So this idea of the form and the formlessness, it's like the source energy is the formlessness aspect of the same energy that is densing down to form the body.
Yeah.
But it's the same energy.
Yeah.
So that's one teaching. The other teaching comes from Regina from Awakening Together, and she uses Play-Doh as a metaphor for awareness. So Play-Doh, you can form Play-Doh in any kind of way. You can form Play-Doh into people loving each other. You can form Play-Doh into people hating each other. You can form Play-Doh into people fighting with each other. But the bottom line is it's all Play-Doh.
Yeah.
So are we talking about the same thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's you know, and if you recognize that what you are is Play-Doh, then it's natural that you'd want to kind of re-embrace all the ways that you've shaped that into a shape. And
Yeah.
you know, we might have forgotten at first that what I really am is this Play-Doh. I'm so enamored with the shape I've made that I've forgotten what it's made out of.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I recall years and years ago when I started getting introduced to these teachings, and I think it was through A Course in Miracles, and I'm not a Course in Miracles student. I'm aware of it, and I've studied a little bit, but I'm not like some other students. But I remember reading the talk about the use of the word form, and I could not grasp what they were referencing. I could not get it. today I get it. And it made me realize that I could not get it because I was so identified as form.
Yeah.
So I could not really understand the distinction. So I think that it feels as if we or I should say, there are times when I identify with form so much that to understand that form is the same as formlessness seems like a stretch, but it really isn't when you understand it's the same thing.
Yeah, and just a simple kind of change of how you're trying to do that helps. It's not something that you can struggle to understand, but just
Right.
be curious. Like, I'd like to have this epiphany. I'd like to understand deeper, and just to let that be enough and allow some space for an aha moment to happen where you'll start to, you know, rather than struggling, if you try to understand it at all, we end up going around in circles because mind can only think about, it can think in opposites, and it cannot have the direct experience that form and formless are one. The best it can do when we think about it is kind of trying to mash them two together somehow, you know, and it's just a question. Okay, if they are the same, I'd like to understand that. I'd like to live that. I'd like to become that understanding. And that really is enough at that level, just to an openness of a question or a soft intention. I'd like to recognize that.
Yeah. Thank you for this teaching, you know, and I think, you know, probably over the last maybe 2 or 3 years, you know, we hear, I have heard a lot, you know, I'm not the body, I am not the body, I'm not the body. And I kind of sort of understood that, but now just kind of embracing that
Yeah.
we are the body, but it's a different, it's in the form version of the same energy as
Yeah.
the formlessness. So
if you
thank
take
you.
water vapor, if you take water vapor in the air, it's invisible and it's intangible, and you know it's here, but you can't see it. And then if we were to cool down this room, at some point water would start condensing on the window and running down, and suddenly it's visible, and we go, that's different, but it's not really. And if we continue to cool it down, eventually it becomes solid ice. Same water, essential thing, but looking extraordinarily different. You know, you could sit on a big enough block of ice, and yet before it's completely intangible. It's kind of like that with the source. You know, it's everywhere all the time, but it seems to have slowed down and condensed itself into a visible shape. Same inherent stuff, you know, the Play-Doh, but it looks and it feels and it appears to be opposite. You know, and that just kind of gets a little clearer as you kind of look at it a few times.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
But wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Lovely. Okay, we'll take Paul and then Diane, and we'll leave it there for tonight. Paul, when you're ready.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. You kind of touched on it when you were talking to Steve, actually, strangely enough. I was just wondering if you still meditate as much as you used to, because I found myself in a space where life itself feels like the meditation, and then when I'm sitting on the cushion with my eyes closed is when I'm actually having a break from the meditation.
Yep, that's funny you say that, because it really kind of when there's been a seeing or when it's deepening happening, and the next stage then is all this stuff starts to come up for you to look at, and it's seemingly triggered by your life experience, and your life becomes a satsang or the meditation, doesn't it? And as you said, you know, I remember sometimes coming home, sitting down, locking the door and closing my eyes and going, oh, finally I can actually get into a nice state, because a lot of the work is being done with our eyes open then, and it becomes meditation, self-inquiry, contemplation kind of all merge into one sort of thing that's happening all the time, more and more. You know, it's not something we're doing as much, rather than something we are just being. There's kind of always something to look at and a deepening happening. And there will be those times where, you know, seated formal meditation, but they probably make up about 5% of the actual meditation I do. If that, you know, it's pretty much a constant effortless meditation that's going on for me now, but it doesn't really make any difference if my eyes are open or closed, or if I'm talking like this, or outside or inside. But that's happened by, it literally moved out into my life. It wasn't happy sitting, it's being the self, you know. It wasn't happy just sitting on a meditation seat feeling that way. It wanted to feel that way all the time. And that to do that, we have to begin to take it into the rest of our life, which it sounds like what's happening for you.
Okay, thank you.
Good, good, good. Lovely. Diane?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, how are you doing?
Oh, I just wanted to take a minute and share gratitude with you, for you, and this group. In particular, Loco, the last time we were here, the last time I was here in the group with you, you said something like, "Oh, I know I talk too much," or something to that effect. And then when I came this morning where I am, when I came this morning, I was like, "Oh, where's Loco?" And then you asked my question, and I so much appreciate your presence and your willingness to articulate what's happening with you. And I had almost the exact same question, and it was nearly 2 years ago, where I felt like I was just like, everything was just a no to everything, it's just like, no, there was just, and I was working a little bit with a teacher at that time, but I didn't feel like well, it wasn't addressed as directly, but maybe, was where I was at the time. And also, I just want to share that there was, prior to being a seeker, I had a very powerful experience that really pulled me out of being a person. And it was, well, before that, when I was a person, I was a very open person, very non-judgmental person. Everybody was welcome in my space, and just really everything was good. Then I kind of was pulled out of that, and then really everything was really beautiful and all, like, everything, no judgment there. And then I came back, and it was just like everything sucked. Everybody's stupid. I don't get you. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's been a long time. Feels like, at least a couple of years that I'm finally really feeling like community. And I'm appreciating everyone's space, everyone's presence. Where you are is perfectly welcome. And it's kind of a new level of opening. So and it's very nice and much more relaxing than like having everybody and everything around me be just so wrong.
It's there is that phase where we've quite often had that wonderful experience, and then we're seemingly thrown back into the opposite, where everything starts to come up to look at, as we were saying, previous questions. But it doesn't have to be a horrible phase if we know how to work with it. Otherwise, it can be quite long and protracted. It certainly was for me. Mixed, these little glimpses of what I really was in between, and desperately trying to get back to that and rejecting what I was feeling in this moment. So there's hopefully a softening that's happening with you, and just kind of less and less trying to get somewhere, get away from this moment, more and more okay, let's look at this when it comes up. You know, it must need looking at, and you know.
Yeah, and absolutely this shelter in place thing is so intensifying that that reality,
Mhm.
or that way that we address reality of trying to, you
Yeah.
know, change the moment all the time. So anyway, that's all, just a little check-in.
Thank you for sharing that. Lovely. Thank you. Fantastic. Okay, so we will leave it there for tonight. Thank you for joining me tonight, and we will be back on Monday at 11 a.m. UK time. I can do this time thing. So thank you for joining me. Namaste.
Namaste. Ellen.